So I see that Rabbi MIMRAN, for the little bit that we're able to do here at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel, it's very popular. But the thing about me is why I'm not doing it more often, because it's limited. And so I want to mine it as best I can for myself. I have problems. Everybody has problems. We want to be able to live a happy life with our spouses and our children. We want to avoid conflict and the kind of difficulties that, can come about. So we have to understand how we're going to do this. We need techniques. That's the great thing that this Kabbalist, this great Kabbalist, Rabbi Yosef MIMRAN, like I said, I learned with him. It's almost like by maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago already. And he's a lot more white than he used to be. But he travels around. He's not a guy that sits in a yeshiva someplace. He doesn't sit. He has yeshivas in many places and all different kinds of resources that he's tapping and moving, but he's constantly, I think he's like Tinkerbell. He's spreading Kabbalistic dust. Really deep guy, but on the move. So we want to know here, he wants you to know something. That in the world, there exists an opponent. Now, like I'm American. I know that when the Christians use the word Satan, Satan is after you. But Satan is actually the word Satan. Satan in Hebrew, which is the same word, pronounced differently, means your opponent. The one who criticizes you, always coming after you. That, he says, is a component. The rabbis say this is a component of the world in which we live. The world is made in din. Din is judgments, but constrictions of the light of God. So also it means that we have to overcome that. We have to find a way through that. And so that's what Rabbi MIMRAN is going to talk about. He says your opponent, over here, part 1, is called the Yetzer Hara, the inclination to do bad. And he says, what is your Yetzer Hara? Get ready. It's the ego. It's your ego. So he says, if someone identifies totally with thought, this means that his entire sense of self is based on the content and activity of his mind. As such, this person would believe that if he were to stop thinking, he would cease to exist, since his entire existence is based exclusively on his thoughts. The aspect of self that believes this is known as the ego. The ego consists of mind activity, and the only way it maintains its place in one's life is through constant thinking. It is built upon a mental image that is formed through a person's conditioning, both personal and cultural, and as he progresses through his life, his or her life, that you have this going on. Now, the term ego has been defined in a number of different ways. In this book, we're using it to refer to a false self. It's a self that is created through a person's unconscious identifications with his mind. Whatever's going on in his mind, that's who he is. Now, Rabbi MIMRAN used to say all the time, and where your mind is who you are. Because he wants you to go to the mind, which you mentioned in the shir from yesterday. It's nothing. The real truth is nothing. It's not whether you get elected. It's not whether you got the biggest salary. It's not if you got the nicest car. It's not if you have the most beautiful husband or wife. Your children, all of that. It's nothing. We must realize, however, that it is the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination. There is a connection to contradict goodness that lies at the root of this ego and energizes it. And there is a vital reason for this. The Borei Olam, the creator of the world, which is nothing, implanted the Yetzer Hara deliberately within every one of us to ensure that we would always have complete free will. So we live in a world of opposites. The world of seeking goodness, but also the world of seeking physicality and something that won't last. The ego's interest is in self-preservation. It does not acknowledge the existence of the neshama. As far as the ego is concerned, only the physical material self matters. Got that nice car. Moreover, it is always trying desperately to keep the past alive, for without it, it feels like, who am I? You remember that back, let's see, go back, I went to the junior, senior prom. I can't even see how many years ago that could have been. It was over 60 years ago. Is that possible? And I was the king of the prom. Keep the past alive, for without it, it feels, who am I? I'm the guy who was a king. It is constantly projecting itself into the future. I'm going to be like that, for it believes that the way to ensure its continuous survival is by constantly remembering it and going back to it again. So Rabbi MIMRAN writes, staying focused on the future also gives it a sort of release from any frustration it may be experiencing currently. Now, what do you mean by that? So in other words, I was once the king, which incidentally I wasn't, but it's neither here nor there, but everybody has achievements. Everybody has special moments. And trying to project that, he says, into the future. He says, so staying focused on the future also gives it a sort of release from any frustration it may be experiencing currently. So I'm not the king right now, but I will be. A future focus will give it some vision of fulfillment to look forward to. So a future, so then I will become something. But you're talking about what? One day. One day it says, after I get through this stage, or when this or that happens, I'm going to be happy. Okay? Happy, at peace. That's where the Arabs say, think they'll be happy if they massacre all the Jews? In this mode of thinking, the present becomes merely a means to an end that will likely never shift. It will never shift from its comfortable home in the future, back in the present, constantly thinking about what will be, when I finally get there. For it lives in a fantasy future, and that future is being projected by the mind, that the mind is projecting. So this is the addiction that we have to what we understand. And in contrast to this, to what he said before, we live in the world of opposites, the world of contradictions. We do different things in order to be able to fluff ourselves up and make it seem to ourselves that we're doing good. But he says the actual truth is nothing. This is Baruch Fleischman, formerly lift manager, now graduating to the Saba, your Saba, at the Tikkun Elevator Kollel.